A video, a white couple beaten with 2x4s by rioters for protecting their store. And everybody, listen, if you were one of those people and you left and then you came back to maybe hear what was said about you, you're a loser. Just know that. And if you're thinking about leaving, well, you have a decision. You can either continue with that decision and be a loser, or you can go free. So those are your choices. It's a time of war. People are being murdered, and there's no more time for playing revolutionary. As dozens of violent and chaotic images circulate the web, illustrating a bleak picture of yesterday's riots, a couple reportedly from Rochester, New York, was severely beaten by rioters wielding planks of wood. Now, of course, this would be written differently. It would be wielding, I don't know, let me see, planks of wood. No, it would be like baseball bats with nails driven through them if it had been the other way around. The footage begins in a confrontation between two white store owners and a group of anti-whites armed with 2x4s. As the rioters and would-be looters appeared to move along, one, excuse me, why not the anti-whites were stalking these people with the intent to murder them because they're white? Why not that? You see, this author needs to be arrested. The anti-whites then began to brutally dish out blows. Dish out. No, you mean they bludgeoned these people into seizures? They bludgeoned them into brain damage? Dish out like they're serving a dessert with their 2x4s on the outnumbered couple trying to protect their business. How about their lives? How about all of the people that were going to the lives of all of their whole life going through them, the memories of all of those people who were going to be missing them, life flashing before their eyes. At the end of the clip, the beaten man screams at the cowardly anti-whites, commanding them to get away from his wife. Can you believe this garbage? God damn, this pisses me off. All over this country. All over this country. Of course, none of this that I'm saying is, all of this news is fake. You can just ask Wojcicki. It's all fake. Just ask the anti-whites. Of course, they won't be going into any of these cities anytime soon. But it's still all fake. Take your white-looking ass down into that neighborhood. Let's see what happens to you. Social media appeared to warm up toward the end of arming oneself as tensions flared. Didn't have I'm not even going to say that word. That's the issue here, commented one tweeter. They beat up a woman for telling them to leave. WTF. So these are people on social media. I'm sure that the anti-whites are going to demand their arrest because they didn't celebrate. It's just the way it's always been. For everybody who has their head tucked firmly up their asses, you can look to the anti-white news sources, and they have always said, whenever they gain this sort of control over the masses of people, and they can instigate them to go out to white erase our people, they have always said, how dare you defend yourself? How dare you shield your head? How dare you not allow your head to be caved in by the anti-whites? The footage is simply a drop in the bucket of the extent of the chaos to take America by storm in the past few days. It's not chaos. It is an organized anti-white attack on our civilization. They are targeting our historical sites. They are targeting our historical records. They are targeting the offices of conservatives, of Republicans, trying to get the identities of their staffs so they can hunt them down. They are targeting everything about us. Is this a news source who supposedly represents? Do you see how we go nowhere? Because nobody is talking in a language and thinking in a way that is the least bit beneficial. Floyd's death has sparked a series of riots, or you mean organized attacks by anti-whites and protests around America, and even going across the Atlantic to Europe. Of course, because this is not about what they say is taking place here. It has never been. God, you SOBs are just so dumb. I find it almost impossible to communicate with you. This is about anti-whites living inside an anti-white narrative that has nothing to do with your goddamn world. It has nothing to do with your reality. How many times do you have to see this replay in your life? This is so beyond stupid. This is like running over those strips with your car that flatten your tire and doing it again and again and never getting that it's that strip with those little pointy bits that are causing your tires to all go flat. Since last night's chaos rocked the country, Donald has declared Antifa to be a terrorist group following their participation in the riot. You mean in the coordinated attacks on Western kind? Is that what you mean? Another defining image was a store owner who rocked up to his establishment brandishing. Oh, I see. Trying to be like interesting there. Brandishing a shotgun and firing into a crowd of would-be looters, you mean anti-whites, vying to rob, murder him, and thieve everything he owns from him. So what did he fire? Like a bird shot or something like that so that nobody would be hurt? No more about that there. Trump. Government to designate Antifa as terrorist organization. Now, I'm really interested in this. Are they really going to actually put it down in the paperwork that they are terrorists? Or is this just more verbiage from this bitch at the White House? Is this just more talk? Is he going to go on and on and on and on about how non-whites have built the country, done so much for us? Yeah, they're doing so much. Ladies and gentlemen, and for all of those out there in the white positive sphere or your relatives who are Republicans or patriots or whatever these losers are, and they're saying, well, they're only destroying their own neighborhoods. Those people are idiots. You're going to pay for it to be rebuilt. Yeah, you're going to pay. And then the anti-whites in the regime, they're going to make you pay for the profits lost. And they'll probably double or triple what they would have made during the time that they get to sit home while their businesses get rebuilt. So it's not they're only doing it to their neighborhoods. And by the way, they're not only doing it to their neighborhoods, they're going out into other neighborhoods increasingly. This is the societal shift that's taking place. This is a war against your existence. This is not against any of these, the myths of pretext we talk. Do you not know what the myths of pretext are? If you don't, it's time to go free. It's time to see what's actually taking place in the world. The moralization, intellectualization, and sentimentalization of their jealousy and their envy, which is the true motivators of the anti-whites that are out in the streets. You'll understand why they come to split your head with a hatchet and they gang rape the women in your family. You'll understand it if you begin to go free. If you need passion to help those around you, then take some of mine. I can only be awake 24 hours a day for maybe 3 days in a row. And then I start to go a little off. And then I got to get about 5 or 6 or so hours to come back. So somebody's got to cover the gap. Somebody's got to start getting pissed off and telling their friends and family, look, you have to go free. There's no more time. These animals, these anti-white animals are going from where they used to just stay put, and they're coming out into your neighborhoods. They're coming out targeting our religious centers, targeting our historical centers. They're targeting the very history and setting it ablaze, pulling the statues down, murdering and raping and maiming. Of course, all of it's fake. Just ask Wojcicki when she gets done with her interview with the pedophile. She'll tell you that it's all not happening. Just ask the people at CNN as they're in their studio, and you can see the building rocking and you can see the fire and smoke roiling in. None of it's happening. Just ask the guy making 7 figures, I think it's at CNN or MSNBC, the anti-white, non-white guy, that says all white people have a disease in your heads. Any moralization, how do they come to it? Any moralization, any intellectualization, any sentimentalization of their desire to inflict injury on Western kind. Anything they can use as a pretext. Do not speak to the things that they say. Ever. A disease in our minds. We need to invite him to go live outside of Western civilization straight away. There's a weird disease. You better get away. Take your white wife and your mixed race children and your Jaguars and your Ferraris and your home. We'll dig it up. We'll carry it with you. You better get out of Western civilization first chance you get, because we're diseased. But guess what? He's not going anywhere. And Trump isn't going to say a damn thing about it. Let's see what another set of promises for the upcoming election. President Trump announced in a tweet on Sunday. Remember him talking about going to designate Antifa a terrorist organization before the last election? Remember that? Does anybody else have more than a goldfish brain? Do you remember that? That never happened. But he's going to do it now, and then it'll actually be effectuated. There are cells of anti-whites all across Western civilization that are being funded by anti-white billionaires and millionaires. Of course, none of it's true. It's all only happening in World of Warcraft. And they are paid in World of Warcraft to target people like me, people working on the staffs of senators, people working in the conservative movement, people working in Christian and Catholic organizations. And the government knows who is paying for that terrorism. You want to know about the terrorism right now that nothing is being done about? The terrorism of every man, woman, and child, every white man, woman, and child across Western civilization who are living in fear this moment and have been living in fear the last several days. Why? Because they see carte blanche given to all of these anti-white animals out there to maim and beat and destroy and set fire to and erase every one of us with impunity. Nothing is going to happen for that terrorism. You cause a non-white person anywhere on planet Earth to have a second thought about nothing but white people singing hymns of praise to them. And the governments of the West move heaven and earth to find out and prosecute the terrorists who would cause them to pause and think that something short of a hymn to their glory will be sung. But you make white women look at their children and wonder, am I going to be able to protect them? Are they going to come through the walls of my home? They're setting up these neighborhood watches all over the country because they are terrorized. No one is saying anything about that. There are tens of thousands of these anti-white pieces of shit that need to be arrested and jailed permanently for these acts of terrorism. And you're going to vote for another Republican. You're going to vote for another conservative. No, you say, what's the answer? Oh, is it secession? Is it a constitution? Is it a new flag? Stop being such a cowardly child. Stop being so pusillanimous. This is it. This is the only way. You have to have a psychological defense for the psychological warfare, or you're going to continue looking like all of these wide-eyed, dipshit white people out there who can't find their head or their ass for a hole in the ground because they are so brainwashed by the mean pathogens. And you want to give them another political party. You want to give them another flag, another song. God, somebody's going to have to get mad other than me. Non-white, what is this teaching our people right now? What is this teaching people, our people right now? What are the mean pathogens right now? What can you talk to your family and friends and strangers about? What is it teaching us right now? All across, this is a giant country, the United States. A giant country. You can at any single moment zero in from orbit in space on any moment of any day and find someone in a position of power treating someone who is not poorly. It happens every single day, hundreds of thousands of times. We can look at all of these cases where, oh, for God's sake, these judges have even admitted, of course, none of this has happened, where they have sentenced white people, where they have dilated the law to ensnare white people because they're white, and then sentence them to longer in prison. There are cases every single day where white people are white people are beaten senseless by police. I was a minor and had the shit kicked out of me by a police officer for riding a dirt bike. And I happened to go out on the road and the dirt bike wasn't legal. This happens all the time. At any moment, you can zero in on any of these instances. And you can take an instant and then feed it up into the anti-white narrative to bolster that narrative, which is exactly what the anti-whites have done with this, and they can do it 10,000 times over. Feed it up into that narrative, and what is it teaching all of you? It's teaching all of you, every white man, woman, and child out there, that a non-white person's life has infinite value no matter how criminal they are. No matter what kind of life they have led and are living, no matter how many people that they victimize with their existence and have victimized in their lives. And remember this, it's not just the woman who fears that her life is going to be taken or that she's going to be raped when she has a gun thrust into her belly by a home invasion. It's not just the people who are bludgeoned by the individual or robbed by the individual and who now lack a sense of security, who now are not able to go a day in their life without a nightmare, without being able to walk down the street and fear every one of that particular group because of what that individual did to them, imprinting this terror on them for the rest of their lives. But it's every person who cares about that person who's also victimized. So what this is teaching us, a whole slew of mean pathogens, is that a non-white person, no matter how criminal, no matter how monstrous, no matter how many people they're victimizing, if they happen to, in the midst of living that life, end up dying, even if they're plagued with heart conditions and on drugs and everything else in the world, even if in the midst of living that life they die, you deserve to die. That's how valuable every individual non-white life is. But if you're a white person and you have lived a moral life, you have done good by all people, You have been good in all ways, obeyed all laws, paid all taxes, contributed in your community, volunteered, participated in community activities, in community leagues. You have been sweet to your grandmother. You have been sweet to your neighbors. You're studying to become a doctor. You're studying to become a social worker. You're studying to become a nurse. You're studying to become a paramedic. You're studying to help society. And you're paying into that society. And there is no possibility that you're going to vary from that life for the next 50 years. You're young. You're full of the hope and blessings. You're full that your parents have imbued into you, that those who care about you have imbued, and what you want to give back to that world. And you have nothing but love in your heart. And then you are viciously gang raped to death by border crossers. And then you are slain by monsters, run over by their cars, butchered. Not a word about you. Your life as a Westman means zero. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how many laws you obey. It doesn't matter how many tax dollars you pay. It doesn't matter how many times you get on your knees at church or at the YMCA when the anti-whites demand you to service them there. It doesn't matter how many times you bend over at work. It doesn't matter how many times you give and placate and promise and pledge and apologize. Your life is still worth nothing. They won't report it. Mountains won't be moved. Heaven won't come down to pass laws and to force these other groups to make amends for all that they have done wrong to us, to your family. Your life is meaningless. That is what the regime is teaching us now. What do they do to these people who can get out in the streets and drive their cars over pedestrians, run people over, bludgeon people to death, blind them for being white, set their businesses ablaze, intentionally leaving businesses alone that they know for sure the signs are up that say it's a non-white owned business of various stripes, intentionally targeting us. What do the police do? What do the National Guard do? They back off. They let them rape you. They let them murder you. You're just white. And they do it all according to the script of the anti-white narrative, that you are a monster because you are born of monsters, that these people are just making amends, that they're just getting back, that it's just retaliation. Well, brothers and sisters, it's an eternal retaliation inside of their story. There's no making amends. There's no placating. There's no getting back. There's no doing right. No amount of white women throwing themselves on their backs and their legs open for non-white men is going to placate them. Cities will burn again, and suburbia will burn next. The only way we are going to stop this from happening is by going free, getting to our people with a psychological defense and the spirituality of Prometheus rising. If you don't have a chance in hell. I am going to continue shouting this all the way up until they surround whatever place I live in, and I will shout it from the roof as long as it takes. Even as they fire on me and the media reports that it's evil that I defend myself. And you better be doing it too. Your life has no meaning in their story. When they say, I never want to see another one of you again, nobody in our sphere, and you all correct them when people in our sphere do this. There are videos out there by the thousands. These anti-whites are videotaping themselves doing exactly as we predict they will do, celebrating it, erasing you, inflicting harm on you, terrorizing you, joy in your fear, joy in your cowering, joy in your pleading for mercy, joy in your blood-soaked corpse on the pavement. They're videotaping it, and they're saying, we're doing this because myths of pretext, moralized, intellectualized, sentimentalized. You tell them to go straight to hell. You do not speak to their claims because they're lies. Their story is lies. Their motivations are lies. You want to speak to something, you can speak to their bestiality, their attacks, not only how they engage with the animal life, but their bestial behavior in their treatment of our people, their destruction of our civilization. You speak to that. You speak to the monsters that they are, these anti-whites. That's what you speak to. You destroy what we have because you didn't make it. You destroy what we build because you couldn't think it. That is why the anti-whites do this. Not because of an immutable characteristic, but because of who and what each individual anti-white is in their hearts. That is why they choose this course. President Donald, in a tweet Sunday, said that the U.S. government will be designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. Antifa, short for, never call them this, they're anti-whites, is a loose collection of, never call them leftist, anti-white groups that operate across the globe and have been blamed for fanning the flames of the anti-white attacks, not riots, that have been seen across the country as a result of the death of, it says right here, the killing, the death of this individual by a police officer this week. In a press conference on Saturday, Attorney General Barr put the blame firmly on the anti-white groups and other anti-white groups for exploiting the situation to pursue their own separate and violent agenda, noting that in many places it appears the violence is planned, organized, and driven by not anarchic, not leftist, anti-white groups, not far left, he says here, anti-white groups, many of whom traveled outside of the state to promote the violence. And they talk about, I saw on the news, they said, well, there's 2,000 arrests here or there or whatever. You know, ladies and gentlemen, they're all just going to be released. They're all going to be released. They take these people, you see them getting cuffed out in the streets. Have you spoken with the police officers? Because some of them write me. Some of them contact me. They arrest them. They put their lives in danger to arrest these individuals who are endeavoring to destroy Western civilization. They have to handle them with kid gloves, or they lose their pension, they lose their livelihood, they can't get hired again anywhere, they have families to feed. I was sent a clip from somewhere else that these, talking about officers in general, who do they serve? They serve themselves just like you do, dumbass. Just like you do. They arrest these people, they put their lives on the line, they arrest these people, then they take them to the police department, they get processed, and then they're set free. And then there are anti-white judges and the like that just let them go. Now, of course, none of that ever actually happens. You'll have to ask maybe the guy at CNN who said that white people have a disease in their brain to see if it really is true. Because everything that we say on this channel is fictional, and you have to look into it for yourself. It's just claims, third removed. But look into these things for yourselves, and I think you'll see that that is indeed the case. Some on the left, some anti-whites have criticized Donald for this move, as the anti-white organization is not one collective organ. But gosh, it's not. And all of these anti-white lawyers are going to come running to their aid. And you'll think, you'll be told, oh, they're pro bono. They're not going to get paid. They're just doing it out of the goodness of they care about rights. When you fools, they're being paid handsomely under the table. Handsomely. But a number of local and, anti-whites often make jokes about being the CEO of these anti-white groups in response to the idea that it is a more, it is an ideology, anti-whiteism. Individuals acting in this way should be rounded up and they should be invited permanently out of our civilization, as their objective is to destroy our civilization. I don't think there's anything else here worth reading. The case for reparations in Oklahoma. Here's an article. In a span of about 24 hours between May 31 and June 1 in 1921, this must be some historical account of something. So here they move forward now. They're coming for, here it goes. This is the case for reparations. Here is a moralized and intellectualized argument to justify the objective they started with before they had those arguments. That's why you don't talk about their arguments. Here they come for everything you own. They come for your lives. They come to destroy your history. They come to white erase everything out from underneath of us. Do not engage them in their lies. Of course, we had these videos. The poor white fool, older gentleman who got out of his vehicle after anti-whites descended on it, destroying it, and he got out with a bow and arrow. And then, of course, they descended upon. Does anybody know? Is he alive? How about the guy? He appeared to be white. I don't know. Who tried to beg the anti-whites to not destroy his store, and then they beat him so bloody and broken that his body lie contorted in irregular positions because so many bones were broken as the pool of blood swells underneath of him. And you know what will happen? The anti-whites will say, it's a bad thing that happened. But, anti-white narrative. It's terrible that all of these people were raped and murdered and maimed. It's terrible that white children are now permanently traumatized because they ended up seeing this stuff on TV and they'll never psychologically recover from it. But anti-white narrative. Anti-white narrative. Yeah, we're going to come and take all of your things away from you, more taxation for you, but anti-white narrative. At what point are our brothers and sisters out there are going to hear going free and people or what point are they going to say, I don't care, as we teach them to say, I don't care what your anti-white conclusion is. If it's a conclusion that's anti-white, I reject it. So when you say reparations, anti-white narrative, I say go to hell. That's an anti-white conclusion. When you say, well, they burned the city down and you're going to pay for it, I'm going to say go to hell. That's an anti-white conclusion. I reject it as a consequence. Stop debating them on their fictional story. They have a story in which you will always be the bad guy. Clip this shit out 1,000 times over. Paste it 1,000 places, and if the people don't like, they don't think I'm pretty enough, put up a prettier face and play my audio. Put up a beautiful woman's face and say, this beautiful woman endorses this man. Who the hell knows who she is? Who cares? Put up a beautiful man and then play my voice in the background. Do whatever it takes to get people to heed this message of going free before we're out of time. Are you going to wait until this anti-white mob is at the end of your suburban street, is at the end of your exurb, the road leading up into your exurb, at the end of your country road. You live out in the sticks. And you're going to say right now, well, you don't write it in the chat. My mods will delete it. If you say something like, well, I've got plenty of X, Y, or Z to defend, you do not. Because guess what? When you defend yourself, if you are able to stop them from reaching you and your home and your family, the law enforcement and National Guard will come for you. You're not going to be allowed to defend yourself if we don't empower the white men, the corn-fed white men that are going to be coming to your house on behalf of the anti-white regime. If we don't get to them with going free, they're just going to obey their orders. They're not going to be able to say their generals, their admirals, their whatever it might be, their commanders are not going to be able to say, I see how we're being harmed here. We cannot let this happen. It's not going to matter right now. It's not going to matter today if one guy at the head of one National Guard unit or one sheriff getting arrested by feds for not carrying out the activities that the feds want them to carry out. It's not going to matter if one here or one there does it. These people need the curative contagion of going free, the spirituality of Prometheus rising, and we have to spread it like wildfire. Or they're going to come to your house, and it doesn't matter how many flares or whatever you might have to defend. It doesn't matter how many fireworks you might have to defend your house, and you know what I'm talking about, because they have more. I got this video playing on the screen of this guy being stomped to death, his bones being broken into so many pieces, his body, position of his body impossible for somebody who is not in pieces. Let's see what you all are saying. Let me go.